Hello, Barry Shank, language arts teacher from Winona, Minnesota here. When posed with the question, how do I assess prior knowledge? I wanted to break it into two distinct categories. How do I assess my own prior knowledge, and how do I assess the prior knowledge of others in the classroom particularly? Mostly because my prior knowledge affects theirs or affects what they are going to learn. First of all, I'm glad that someone asked this question because oftentimes I've noticed in PLCs in school, when people share about how they assess students, it almost becomes a competition about who's doing it right or wrong when this really isn't even the question. It's like, what are our options and what can I learn from you? People take it more personally, which inhibits the scaffolding because we are supposed to listen to what others have done, use our own teaching methods, our own imaginations, and go from there. So I'm hoping that as this conversation comes up more often, that that is the case. So why does prior knowledge matter? Hattie and Yates state in their book, Visible Learning and the Science of How We Learn, what you already know determines what you can learn and how you think. Learning proceeds quietly and efficiently when what is new builds directly upon what is already secured. They talk about the schema or the schematics that we use and how it affects concepts, abstractions, script, what we say and write, and the big picture. So we must consider the human experience also from two venues, academic life and personal life. I like to use both when I assess people's past knowledge. Academic assessment often includes in my classroom direct questions. I will just, whenever necessary, ask a direct question using a student's name or directing a group. And I have learned through the LDT program how important it is to wait for some answers. So oftentimes I'll ask students to give me an answer in 20 seconds or something like that. But direct questions are very effective in my classroom. Also through writing, especially at the beginning of the year when I really need to assess where students are coming in at. I have students write a memoir, which I believe assesses both their personal knowledge, prior life, and their academic prowess because they talk about a personal thing in a memoir, and I can still check for how they're writing and how they like to say things. I give pretests to show areas of mastery or those that are questionable. I repeat questions by using various tools to check for understanding through group work. I often ask students to create presentations which explain something specific. I like it when students fill in diagrams. I like visuals. I'll have students give reports and then, of course, use both formative and summative assessments. And then we talk about personal life, assessing through life experiences. Oftentimes, I'll have students talk about their family traditions, which can lead into how where they have traveled and some of their favorite things or their hobbies, play get to know you games. One of my favorite projects is an art project. It's both show and tell and art because it uses word art where students draw a family tree using just the letters from the names, and the base of the tree is one of the main letters in perhaps their last name or something. But it's a very cool visual. It gets students talking about their family. They can even put experiences on as leaves and decorate the ground with squirrels or horses or whatever's in their life. So that's kind of cool. And through that, it's amazing what you can find out and how you can assess prior knowledge and prior experiences. And then, of course, we do quite a bit with poetry and poetry slams too. I also wanted to talk about long-term versus short-term because I found this very, very interesting in An de Jong's article. He states that there's a difference between the long-term and the short-term knowledge. And yes, of course, I would agree that cognitive load theory comes into play here. We rely on long-term memory because it's the building block. And Hattie and Yates talk about this as well. And I thought of a visual, the Lego creation, the Jenga game, the Lincoln log memory, which the long-term memories which stabilize the rest of what we learn, and stabilize the rest of our lives. But what I thought was interesting in De Jong's article was that short-term memory is often how we are judged or how we are assessed. And I think that educators must consider both. Short-term memory is fun, it's creative, it's spur of the moment, it's recent, it's relevant, it's very important in our day-to-day. I think we forget how that long-term building block, the stability, the basis of what we know is also important and needs to be considered. So back to the question, why does it matter? Because cognitive load is created all day long. I like the use of the word load because it can put a load on one's mind, and we need to remember that as instructors. Cognitive load relates to the working memory within instructional systems. It is the short-term memory using small amounts of information, and as stated on the previous slide, it's associated with cognition and academic achievement. So we measure this cognitive load, this working memory, this short-term memory more than we measure the long-term memory because we don't see the long-term memory. It's what we notice when a student is thinking or waiting 20 seconds to answer a question. So, when assessing prior knowledge, I think that it helps students understand that experiences, both academic and personal, matter. And I think it shows them that teachers are trying to understand to help all students learn. And I must remember in my self-assessment that there is always room for adapting and expanding how I assess prior knowledge, both my own and of those that I work with.